Things don't look good for Jet Airways. The airline may be temporarily grounded as early as tonight, as the board meets to come up with solutions to keep the airline alive long enough for it to be sold. The 1,500 crore rupee emergency funding has not been released by SBI, and in the meantime, the creditors are beating down its doors. Lenders like the US Exim Bank has now recalled a 2,000 crore rupee worth of loans and plans to repossess aircraft with Jet Airways. Other lenders want the airline to only operate 5 or 6 aircraft a day to keep the airport operating permits in force, but not to spend too much money on operations in general. The board, on the other hand, may prefer to ground the airline temporarily because there's just no money for operations. Nearly 20,000 employees haven't been paid for a couple of months. This includes permanent employees like ground staff, in-flight staff, pilots, loaders, but also temporary employees, people who drive the cars that pick up the hostesses and the flight attendants from their homes, people who load the cars, people who deliver the food. All of them are looking at unemployment. While employees ask SBI to release the funding, they must also remember that even if the funding is released, it's unlikely to be used to pay pending salaries. It may only be used for operations. Sources now say lenders are ready to infuse partial funding to run day-to-day operations. However, they're unwilling to infuse a large amount of money until there's more clarity on the expression of interest by bidders. And in the most amusing part of this entire story, Naresh Goyal himself bid to buy the airline over the last couple of days and then withdrew that bid when no one else wanted to do business with him. Other bidders threatened to pull their bids back if Naresh Goyal was in the fray. The question, of course, that nobody asked was this: if Naresh Goyal had the money to buy the airline, why didn't he use it to pay the loans? Secondly, did Naresh Goyal dump India with a bad airline and leave, only to come back after the debt was restructured by SBI? What is really going on? And if all of this and when all of this plays out, is there anyone looking out for the interests of the 20,000 employees? Right now, I have Neha live with me with committee members of the National Aviators Guild. Neha, good evening. You've spent a lot of time today with employees who are protesting. Could you tell us what they've told you in terms of when the last salary was paid and if they've received any sort of information from the board or the management of the airline right now?
That's right, Faye. Today was an entire day of meetings, between the Jet Airways management, the Jet board, and also finally the employees. All three of them struggling and finding only one way if Jet will ever receive the promised funds from the lenders, which till now has not come yet. The pilots have been staging a lot of protest in the past. They've been asking for their pending salaries, claiming that while they've been abiding by the airline and saying that we'll continue to fly, but the salaries must come soon. We've seen multiple protests by the management staff, the other people at the back end saying that they have not been paid since the past 1 month. But yet, Faye, there is no clarity on how the funds are going to come. Let's straight away go across to the National Aviators Guild here. This is a pilot union body that represents the Jet Airways pilot, and they say that they've had a meeting, 6-hour-long meeting with the CEO, but no conclusion till now has been received. Asim, let's start with you. You practically had a talk again with the CEO, asking for the same things that we're asking. Any kind of resolution in the meeting?
Hi. So as of now, the management has been trying very hard to convince SBI to release the funds which were promised to us. Now, they were in the tune of about 1,500 crores. Now, those funds have not come in so far. And they are looking at all the options, including suspension of operations.
We've been saying that, are you saying that if the funds are not coming, so that means no salaries for you all, are you trying to say that?
That's correct. The funds have to include salaries. Okay, the salaries have to be a part of whatever funding we get. And if that doesn't happen, the management is very clear that they will suspend the operations.
Asim, give us an estimate of how many pilots wait for their salaries. What is the quantum of this amount? How much does Jet owe you all, and since how many months?
Well, I will not be able to give you the amount, but I can tell you that we have been waiting for 3.5 months without salaries, and this includes the engineers, this also includes the management, and all the other employees have not been paid for the last 1 month.
The rest of you all here, you all have also been speaking to the management. Tell us, has the management kind made of any promise that even if the partial funding comes in from any source, even if some amount comes in, does that mean your salaries will be paid first, and does that mean that you all will continue flying?
So today's meeting that we had with the management was basically just to get an idea of what kind of funding is coming in and what part of that funding would be allocated towards pilot salaries, employee salaries. And we've been categorically told by management that they have told SBI that like lesser and vendor charges or fuel charges, employee salaries have to be factored in. So whatever amount comes, it has to be factored in.
Sir, but the point is employees' salaries have to be factored in. This has been the claim of Jet Airways since long, but still the salaries have not come. You all have been threatening a no-fly strike if that happens. What remains the position, because it's late now and the funds have not come in? Are you saying you will not fly another aircraft if the funds don't come in?
Well, we won't have to take that call because, as we've said earlier, and my colleagues also have said the same thing, that the management themselves understand their responsibility, that as with statutory payments that have to be made to everybody, employees are as important, and our management believes that the employees also are the redundant, it's not a non-redundant, they have to be paid. So a trickle of money, of an amount which is coming, is not going to just do this job. So they have categorically informed us, and we are with them with this understanding that same way that they need to run operations, pilot salaries and employee salaries for that matter, have to be factored into whatever infusion of funds that is coming in. And I mean, 1 or 2 crores is not rocket science. It's just not going to do. So they will need a sizable amount of infusion if the banks are serious about helping us and reviving us, as we are serious standing here waiting. All of us we are pilots, and this is not what we do. We fly. So we would like to get back there.
Right. That's right, Faye. As they said that if the banks are really serious about getting the money, they should be given their dues.
Absolutely, Neha. Thank you for that update. In the meantime, the Civil Aviation Secretary has put out a statement saying Jet Airways has asked for emergency funding of 400 crore rupees from its lenders. The company is in talks with lenders right now. Of course, the government says it's a commercial decision between the lenders and the company to release that money. So basically, it's a question of who blinks first. No one is confident of Jet Airways being healthy enough to attract a bidder and to be bought over by someone. And unless there's some sort of evidence of a viable bid, the lenders don't want to give them any money. Without the money from the lenders, there's no way to keep the airline healthy enough to attract a bidder. So it's really a terrible sort of catch-22 situation for this airline at this point. And the worst part about it is these hardworking employees who have done absolutely nothing to find themselves in this position. They've worked hard, they've dedicated themselves to an airline that seemed top-notch and in perfect health until several months ago. And suddenly they're staring at the possibility of losing their jobs and not being paid their arrears. On the show with me this evening, Parvez Damania, former director of Kingfisher Airlines, who understands the business very well, Bhaskar Ghosh for the BJP, Ravindra Gupta, Joint Secretary of the All India Bank Officers Confederation, Harshvardhan is an aviation expert, and Arijit Burman, senior editor with the Economic Times, who tracks the aviation sector. I will start with my colleague Arijit Burman. Arijit, here's my question. At the end of the day, it's about really the employees, and the employees are the ones we should worry about. Has it reached a point where the airline, cannot stay alive unless lenders release money, and lenders don't seem to want to release money without evidence of a bid?
Yes, absolutely. It's becoming a case of is Jet becoming too frail to fail? If you remember, I think it was a month back when the same panel had met and discussed, and both Parvez and I were pretty emphatic that things were really dim. Why? I have a few questions to the whole way the process is being run. It's nothing short of a knee-jerk reaction. People are trying to get band-aid solutions. Nobody is looking long-term, because even a 1,500 crore bailout that was talked about a month and a half back, that was clearly not enough. And now with each passing day, it's getting the fleet's getting shrunk. the entire operation and the footprints getting shriveled, what is really left but a carcass? It's the same old story. Companies go bankrupt, but the promoters don't. Jet is yet another example, and what amazes me is now we have a bankruptcy regime, which we didn't when Kingfisher went belly up. It's high time now to take Jet into that bankruptcy process and recover whatever little, and I emphasize whatever little, is left of this once national champion.
Well, another quick question, Arjit, and this is also coming in from one of our viewers who has asked a very straightforward question, is if the airline does get money in some way, will that money be used to pay the dues or pay the employees? And this is Abhijit Kumar who's asked the question. So let's assume several things could happen. Lenders could release money, a bid could come in and someone could buy the airline, or bankruptcy where the assets are liquidated. In any of these cases, where is the priority? On what list of the priority do the employees appear? At what point will they get paid?
In a bankruptcy process, there are fixed milestones, there are terms and agreements. It's all formulated. Now nobody knows, because who really owns Jet Airways? It's in a limbo. The banks and the consortium, they are also not they are also not singing the same tune. The larger lenders, PNB and SBI, they have far more skin in the game. Therefore, they want a revival very fast. Not all the lenders are on board for that. So that's where the problem is, that nobody really knows at this point who owns Jet Airways. The board, which ideally should have stepped in, is still, saying things which are pretty much vague, and they should be held accountable. The problem, and I repeat, that until and unless you take it to a bankruptcy process, all these questions will remain legitimate questions. There won't be a clear answer. Mind you, even if somebody puts in a viable revival option, he has to do a diligence. There are some expressions of interest that have come in. That has to be now gone through a diligence process, which will take at least a month. Only then can we expect a firm offer, which has to be accepted by all stakeholders, and then we can think of a revival. If we expect an Etihad or a private equity consortium coming in tomorrow and taking control, that is not going to happen.
Well, Parvez, here's my question to you, and again, I'm bringing up a lot of the questions that are popping up on Invol, and our viewers are asking us. Pancham Kumar says, will Jet Airways be acquired by some company, or is it too late? Is there anything left right now for anyone to acquire?
That's what is worrying me tremendously. On 25th March, when we met here in the same room, the SBI chairman was very clear that they were going to pump in 1,500 crore.
Yes.
Bring the airline, and they said they're working on a plan from 4 months. They were going to put 1,500 crore, make the airline a viable proposition, and then market it. Now the problem is they have not pumped in a single rupee. There were talks. I wish they had done that much study and that much due diligence while giving the 8,500 crore, as they are now studying to give the money now. Now, I don't understand why would somebody come. If somebody comes, I think that's great, because I know for a fact most of the aircrafts have been taken away by different companies. There are very few 737s left. The worst part is, and the sad part is, all the slots in Mumbai, Delhi are given away. Arijit, what is the value of an airline that has no slots, no flying rights and no aircrafts? Why would somebody pay a fortune for a company that has 5 ATR and 2 Boeings flying?
Yes.
It's easier to start a new airline.
Let me ask Mr. Harshvardhan that question. Mr. Harshvardhan is aviation expert who joins us right now. Mr. Vardhan, what is the value right now of an airline that has no aircraft, no slots? It does have operating licenses, but for how long will it retain those licenses if it's not flying?
You can just apply to DGC and get a new license. There's nothing big.
Is there anything here worth buying, Mr. Vardhan?
Well, to be frank, in terms of the net worth, I don't think there is anything there. When coming to license and other things, it's a very low cost valuation, because it's not a very expensive process to get license. But to build up this kind of market structure, route structure and infrastructure is a huge exercise. So if somebody can bring in money quickly and take over the management, there is a possibility. But then I think the way the bankers have behaved, to me, I think they have goofed up more than what Naresh Goyal goofed up, because first point, they had no business to interfere in the natural process of the business enterprise, which was going down the drain. Even at that time, I had mentioned that this kind of holding operation is not going to sustain the airlines. It's better to close it down and then take a call on it. And recently, if you see the example of SpiceJet turnaround, when Vijay Singh got into it and he revived it. So it's not an impossible situation, and it's still a fairly early situation. But between now and few weeks, not much will be regained. You know, if you think that you should continue to operate and then you're only sinking in money. If you have to invest, invest when you have actually done a due diligence and are ready with the cash chest. So that is the situation.
Mr. Ashwardhan, I have a quick question for you. Just 1 second, sorry. I was just looking at the history of the airline, and just last year in March 2018, there was a news story about how Jet Airways was part of a consortium that was bidding to buy Air India. So you have to be at some level viable in order to consider buying another airline. So Jet was last year, exactly a year ago, bidding to buy Air India, and this year has gone completely belly up. How could things have gone south or gone sour so quickly in just 1 year for a 25-year-old airline?
Well, to answer your question, I think that would have been a kind of a funded project where Jet would have been assured by investment bankers and private equity funds that they would be willing to put in the funding, and Jet would act as the operating partner. But coming to that, you know, I am very surprised that Naresh Goyal made another bid to buy it back, because if Naresh Goyal had money, why did you allow it to come to this stage? And that is a question not only with Naresh Goyal, even with Etihad. You know, the bankers have been touting the name of Etihad, because if Etihad was ever serious, they would have moved in a year ago. They wouldn't have waited for the airlines to get into back to Caracas stage. So I think that is one situation. The second situation is that bankers have now taken away the obligation of Naresh Goyal in creating this mess. You know, whatever individual obligation as an individual, like the Vijay Mallya is running around for his own safety today. Now Naresh Goyal has no such obligation. He is sitting pretty and also telling on your face that I am willing to buy it back. I think that's a very interesting scenario, and someone has to question why did the Indian banks allow this situation to take place. So I think it's a very, it's not an easy solution, and doing a holding operation would only make the matter worse, because the liabilities will only increase. If you close it down, the liabilities level can be frozen. But the moment you start doing a holding operation, pumping limited money, you are putting money down the drain, and that would be of no use, because if anybody thinks that between now and partially running airline there will be an increase in valuation, I beg to differ with them.
All right, let me, we have a couple of people on the phone line. Sri Kumar on the phone line from Chennai. Mr. Kumar, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Faye, give me 2 minutes to put the things into perspective. The biggest problem Jet has faced is they are having the highest per seat per kilometer cost. You know, it was 4 rupees 30 paisa. Mr. Parvez must be agreeing to my point. Number one, what we should do now, because the 16,000 employees is a huge number. You know, what we need to do, this bankruptcy suit, etc., is going to jeopardize their livelihood. We need to have a ILFS like a kind of a thing where we can have a truncated flight run, and they should not overrun the long distance flight. Let us reschedule the flight, and it is, you know, Mr. Goyal has, you know, drained out so much of money. That is the problem. You know, these promoters, they suck so much of money, using ton of crores of cash to run a, and same thing is happening after the Kingfisher. You know, he got into your cargo and all, which was not his.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. Srinivas on the phone line from Belgavi. Srinivas, go ahead.
Yeah, namaskara.
Namaskara.
Madam, my thing is very, very simple. As a small-time businessman, I myself am a micro-industrialist.
Really,
And
sir.
as a common sense, what happens is, first of all, who is to be blamed? Every business comes and goes. But then, where are the chartered accountants who did their audit all these years? Why, if there is so much of money being extracted from the company, why it has not been brought to the notice of the government? At that point of time, the government should have taken action and
Yes.
then told for rectification measures, and then it becomes a white elephant. The same is the case for Air India, where actually it is red and it should be stopped long time back. But then our taxpayers' money goes like that. If in
Yes.
case
So that's a very, very fair question that Mr. Srinivas is asking from Belgavi, and I want to take the question now to the other two members of my panel. One of them is with the All India Bank Officers Confederation, and the other one is with the BJP. First question to Mr. Gupta. Mr. Gupta, obviously, Indian banks led by SBI has a massive responsibility here. I mean, look at the situation we are in. SBI has taken on the debt and the board and the responsibilities of this airline. Naresh Goyal has literally flown away and he's offering to buy it back. Does he think we are all fools? And the people who are losing out here are those who have given the last 20 years of their lives to this airline as employees. Where is the responsibility? Will the responsibility be attached to the individual, Naresh Goyal, or to the banks who have failed here now? What is your opinion?
In fact, in this case, if you find that, first of all, I would say that private sector is not the epitome of the high standard of the governors. In this case of the Jet, this has been proved. And moreover, the question you have just put into me that, see, in this case, the Jet was getting the money from the banks. And the due diligence was done in the case of while providing the loans to this case. And in the month of March, the lenders attempted to save these airlines from the crisis to grounded all their airways, and they decided to give another 1,500 rupees for the operations and all that. But after the due diligence, they find that putting the another cash into the operation, that may be a bad decision because their net worth has already been eroded. And I would say at the same time, when this crisis has been deepened, and moreover, if you say that the aviation industry is a bubble, in the past, Modi Loop, Sahara, Kingfisher, so many airlines came and they vanished from the scene. Jet was also in the crisis so many times in the past also. But now the crisis has deepened. And authorities from the all sides are trying to save the Jet. In that way, I would say the private sector is not at the high standard. And Air India is now saved by this attempt that at least government may not think to privatize the Air India. And here, Naresh Goyal had the equity of 51% at the beginning before March. When the lenders find that Air 8,000, 900,000 rupees in crisis, then his equity was reduced to 22%. Similarly, Etihad equity was also reduced to 12%. And they wanted to give it to some other investor who to run this airways. But now that the crisis has deepened, the IBC code may be applied in the coming days. No, if the no investor they find. But at the same time, I would say Jet was a premier airways which was operating in India, and where they were having the best of the prime routes in this country. And since the air passenger traffic is on the rise, there is a highest footfall. Now, let me complete. I would say immediately at this moment, these airlines must be nationalized and government may take over the entire Jet Airways
I have no interest in owning an airline.
Run this operation.
Good God.
So,
Mr. Gupta, as a taxpayer of this country, I'll tell you, I have no interest in owning one more airline. We already have one loss-making airline that's guzzling money, taxpayer money. I don't believe the government of India has the expertise or the knowledge and any sort of know-how or sense of responsibility to responsibly run an airline. The way the government is currently running our public sector banks is enough evidence that we don't want the government entering any more businesses. Bhaskar Ghosh, here's the question.
Let me.
Mr. Gupta, I have to allow Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh to comment. And you did say, of course, you expect the government to nationalize. I completely disagree with you. In fact, I'm of the opinion that the government must exit as many businesses as possible because it has no business running an airline. Bhaskar Ghosh, here's my question to you. At what point do you believe the finance ministry failed? Did the finance ministry fail by not running the banks, the public sector banks, responsibly enough to make sure that they are lending responsibly? Did the finance ministry fail by allowing Naresh Goyal to actually exit the country when he had this much in debt? Did the finance ministry fail when allowing Naresh Goyal to actually bid for an airline that he dumped on us and walked away? I don't even understand how this is possible. Please tell me why our taxpayer money, instead of being used to save starving children, is being used to bail out people like Naresh Goyal.
See, first of all, I believe that here the finance ministry as well as government of India has got a limited role. The crisis which has been today been highlighted, it has started way back, and in principally the government, the main lenders was the SBI and PNB. So they are supposed to have all the checks and balances. They have internal auditors, they have the RBI, they have the reporting authorities. So I believe that if the reporting would have been done on the right time, then as a measure from finance ministry, we have been already taking the measures. But today when the crisis have been deepened and the situation is like this, going out of the hands, so Government of India as well as Ministry of Finance is playing a very constructive roles. Our main objective is to look into 3 points. Number one, the huge unemployment that could be generating a social crisis, and how to protect that. Number two, the oil companies which are owing money from the jet, how to minimize their exposure or minimize their losses. Number three, the entire process of restructuring, if anything to be done from the Ministry of Finance in order to help the restructuring and the revive these airlines, obviously Ministry of Finance is looking into all possibilities with open mind. And they have no intention to take over another ailing airlines apart from whatever Air India is today. We are paying hugely for this Air India 55,000 crore, which has been generated by the UPA regime. We are already paying a heavy, heavy toll on this, or heavy price on this. So there the Government of India as well as Ministry of Finance is doing its best so that the SBI and other lenders should take a very, very viable decisions.
Yes. One second. Mr. Ghosh, I heard the points you were making. I have a rebuttal to offer you, and then I'm very sure the rest of the panel does as well. If I just may first, you said the Government of India has a limited role, that this is mainly the responsibility of lenders, SBI and PNB. If you could please recall who owns SBI and PNB, you'll remember it is the Government of India. The Finance Ministry, I beg your pardon, is the largest stakeholder. Also remember, PNB has the good reputation of the entire Nirav Modi's scam. So we should have been more careful. You said the Ministry of Finance is being constructive. Please let me know how the Ministry of Finance decided along with the lenders to restructure these loans and let Naresh Goyal get away scot-free when he obviously has enough personal money to buy back the airline. This is completely ridiculous. And you're talking about unemployment. This is something that you should have realized earlier, but I will hand it out now to the rest of my panels. Parvez, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Mr. Ghosh, I just want to ask you, has Jet Air been declared an NPA or not? Has it been, because on March 25th, the SBI chairman said Jet Air has been not declared an NPA. I want to understand, was it declared an NPA? At what stage was it declared an NPA? And I want to understand, after you took over, I mean the government as the SBI, have you done a forensic audit? Have you found any leakages? Was all the money that was given as loans being utilized for the company, or has there been any diversion of funds? Have you taken any action to see the accounts? Have you found any irregularities? Because I am 100% sure there are huge irregularities. And I am trying to tell you, if you are trying to save the airline, are you trying to sort out, you are happily allotting the parking lots and the slots to other airlines. After the parking lots and slots allotted, what are you going to sell? I want to understand, if Jet Air goes down, what is the amount of money from 8,500 crore you are going to recover? Have you got any assets to back it up?
Yes.
Will you recover any money? In Kingfisher, you recovered no money. Then you blamed it on the UPA government. Now in this case, everything was handled by your BJP government. What is the position and how are we going to save the money? You are saying unemployment is worrying you? 16,000 people means 80,000 individuals. And okay, we are all talking only of banks.
Yes.
I want to understand what is the default of Indian Oil, HBA, Airport Authority India, Provident, TDS, income tax. Those defaults we are not even talking about.
Yes.
I mean, this could end up huge, bigger than Kingfisher Airlines.
What do you think the salary bill would be right now, pending? Arrears in salaries if employees were to be paid?
I have no idea, thousands of crores, but what I'm saying, we are only and only talking about the banks. I'm worried about what about all the other poor vendors? How much money they would have lost? I just read some article here that one kid lost his life.
Yeah.
I mean, what action have you taken against Naresh Goyal? You gave him the money. I'm sure he signed a number of personal guarantees. Have you revoked those personal guarantees? What is the position of that? Somebody's going to move this matter to court. You are taking this matter very lightly. If Naresh Goyal has the money to rebuy his airline, why hasn't he paid off the loan?
Yes.
If you could ask him on March 25th to resign, why didn't you ask him 6 months earlier? You should have said either you resign, let a new company take over, or you pay off the loan.
Okay,
What action did you take?
But 1 second. I also want to give Arijit Barman an opportunity to rebut to what Bhaskar Ghosh said. Arijit, go ahead.
No, what I want to understand from the government, a lot of people said, if Mr. Harshvardhan, I think, said, why isn't Etihad offer his lip service? Now, mind you, our FDI laws do not allow foreign entities to own Indian Airlines. There are caps, there are checks. The management, the board has to be largely Indian controlled. There are these laws. So even if Etihad wants, and Etihad has been seeking exemptions from our regulators, which are again government entities, yet to come by. The same exemptions were given to SpiceJet, which helped SpiceJet turn around. So I don't understand, a rule which is applicable for one, same set of rules or exemptions not applicable for the other. We've also blamed the banks. We all know why the banks are not doing what the banks ought to do. These are government banks. Their hands are tied. A very senior cabinet minister, maybe it was a Freudian slip, but a major one, said on air in an interview, in a televised interview recently, that how can we allow an airline to go under before elections? So therefore, that banks also cannot take prudent decisions, quote unquote, before elections. This is becoming a political issue, and therefore, I keep re-emphasizing, it is time to take it to bankruptcy. There is a process, there is a method through which the entire airline can be transferred under a referee and resolution professional, and we've seen that work for steel companies, power companies. It's time now to take Jet. I mean, from October, Naresh Goyal has been stalling and stalling. I mean, why is it that he did not accept offers from Etihad, from several other international airlines, from Tata's, from private equity consortiums way back in October? The airline was feasible, was a viable proposition at that point in time. We are now in April. He's been stalling from then. And now he's nowhere to be seen. He's in London.
Even the aircraft that are owned by Jet are mortgaged. Most of the aircrafts are leased. Some of the wide body are owned by Jet. They are also mortgaged. So, I mean, what I'm saying, there's nothing to recover except for old engines and maybe old spare parts. There's nothing to recover. I want to understand what is the recovery going to happen finally.
There's some information that's just coming in. Just 1 second, 1 second. There's some information that's just coming in. Information that's just coming in. Sources tell us that Etihad, NIIF, TPG may come together to submit a bid for Jet Etihad. There is talks going on right now to form a consortium between these entities. Etihad may team up only with NIIF if it's unable to get TPG on board. So that's the latest information coming in right now, that there is some hope Etihad, NIIF and TPG may come together to submit a bid. They're currently in conversation to form that consortium. If TPG does not come on board, Etihad may team up only with NIF and together they may bid for Jet Airways. That's the information that we have right now. Mr. Harshvardhan, at the end of the day, there are several things that have gone wrong, but I just want to focus on one thing, and that is, and like you said, the personal or the individual responsibility of Naresh Goyal, and perhaps how he was sort of completely let off the hook. Here was someone who owned half the airline until a year ago. That airline has been run to the ground. So we don't understand what the auditors were doing, what the members of the lenders who were looking at their books were doing, what the CAs were doing, what the directors on the board were doing, but we certainly haven't been told what Naresh Goyal was doing and how he was allowed to just completely leave the country as if there's zero responsibility, only to come back and bid to buy back that same airline. I mean, somebody is pulling wool over our ears right now. Who do you think it is?
Well, to begin with, the question is more deeper. How did Jet get loan up till 8,000 crores? How was he allowed to get the loans up to that crore? Because when you know their net assets were less than 1,000 crores, how do you permit an entity of this nature to have this kind of an exposure? It starts with that. The second phase is that post Etihad investment in Jet, the bankers should have been extremely careful of monitoring the performance of Jet Airways, because that was a bailout in itself. It is not the first time Jet has got into this mess. They had been there 5 years ago when Etihad investment was brought in, and that was a form of a bailout. Now coming to the moot question, it is the bankers are fully accountable of what they have done vis-a-vis Naresh Goyal. They have actually allowed him to go scot-free, and to me it's a criminal action on the part of the banker. Somebody should be held accountable for it. And then I have a feeling that somewhere the banks were also led to a garden path. They felt that there are too many takers or buyers if Naresh Goyal is not in the picture, and maybe they could swing the deal. But once they allowed Naresh Goyal to get out of it, they perhaps realized that all those promises were not realizable promises, or may not be the actual correct promises. So I think they are now in a very bad situation. They have now bailed the cat, and they do not know what to do with it.
Do you believe that, and let's remember that after Nirav Modi, the regulations were changed to allow CEOs and CMOs of CMDs of banks to write a red letter notice to immigration saying, do not let this person leave the country.
Absolutely.
In spite of having
correct.
those benefits.
MDs and the chairmen directly have the power now to write to the immigration authorities.
Sorry, Mr. Harshvardhan, go ahead.
No, but here you are giving him, here you are giving him a red carpet send off. You are telling him, thank you very much, you have signed it on us. And,
I am just asking you.
Responsibility, go and enjoy yourself.
Okay, Mr. Harshvardhan.
According to me, the reason why he could leave, because the airline was not declared an NPA. If the airline was declared an NPA, the government would have full rights to stop him from leaving. I do not understand. From 25th March, the airline is not declared an NPA. The SBI chairman's interview was there that it's not an NPA. Till today, the airline almost was in what day was it declared NPA? When there were defaults must be happening from months and months onward, till March 25th, till they asked Naresh Goyal to leave, they could have said, you do not leave the country till we do a forensic audit. We find out that there was no mismanagement, no siphoning of funds. They let him leave. He is giving interviews from and talks and addressing the employees from London. I mean, this London has become a safe haven. I'm sure everybody's partying right now. And PNB and State Bank are the help of this whole thing. I mean, I don't understand. Right now, they're worried about giving 100 and 200 crores to save the airline. They didn't think that much when they were giving 8,500 crores.
Let's keep reminding our viewers that Kingfisher Airlines at the time when cases were being filed against Vijay Mallya owed 6,000 crore rupees. Jet Airways right now owes well above 9,000 crore rupees.
Yes.
And somehow the treatment is completely different in these two cases.
Now
I don't understand
we feel not fair to Vijay Mallya.
There hasn't been, no, I
but
will not go down that road with you. I want to know why there hasn't been an FIR filed against Naresh Goyal yet.
Employees have already moved the police station. That I know for a fact.
Why haven't the banks moved to the police station?
So the banks should have moved. No, first of all, the banks have not completed a forensic audit. How can they accuse him or charge him if they have not completed an audit? At least the bank should come out with an audit.
As to what happened.
This is the report,
yes.
And everything is clear.
Yes, all right. Neetu Shukla on the phone line from Mumbai. Neetu, go ahead. Good evening. Hello? All right. Vijay Singh on the phone line from Mumbai. Vijay, if you can hear me, go ahead.
Hello?
Neetu, go ahead.
Yes, that's me.
Yes.
May I?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, I have sat through multiple, innumerable number of debates on Kingfisher Airlines on all channels, including yours. What is different in this case is, for once, BJP spokespeople cannot blame it on UPA. UPA cannot blame it on BJP because this entire scam, fortunately, has happened at the tail end of BJP tenure.
Okay.
So now they can't say that it has come from the UPA era. They, after sitting and talking about why Manmohan Singh spoke to the banks and asked for the banks to bail out Kingfisher, implying that he had some vested interests, have done far worse with Naresh Goyal. Not only have they converted his loans into equity, but they've also allowed him to leave the country, which fortunately is something only your channel is debating and talking about. The rest of the channels are not even talking about that. So I want to know, with all the chowkidars in BJP, are they just there to say Salam Saab and allow people to leave the country? Because what news article we read was 36 people have fled the country along with the Modis and the Mallyas of the world. And now we have Naresh Goyal.
All right, that's a fair question. Let's allow Bhaskar Ghosh to answer it. Mr. Ghosh, everybody wants to, and I want to know also. How was, yes, I see your hand up, Mr. Gupta. I will come to you. How was Naresh Goyal allowed to leave the country? And why was he allowed to get away scot-free with zero personal responsibility for this entire mess? 20,000 employees hanging in the balance, banks, income tax, PF, there'll be so many arrears, like rightly pointed out by Mr. Damania, the Airports Authority wouldn't have been paid, nobody's been paid. How did this happen, Mr. Ghosh? चौकीदार हमारे इतने सारे हैं, कहाँ गए?
First of all, Faye, let me understand one thing. If Naresh Goyal has gone out of the country, does that mean he left the country?
Yes.
Does that mean that he is a bhagoda?
Yes.
Does that mean that he is absconding?
Yes.
Right? It's not that. He has gone out of the country. Is it not been established fact that he has left the country? He has been declared by several investigating agencies as a
why not?
or something like that.
Mr. Ghosh, why not?
So, first
he
of all,
owes 9,000 crore rupees. He hasn't paid his employees. He hasn't paid his debtors. Zero responsibility. He's just left.
Provident fund, income tax, all these are criminal cases. Not paying an employee. I know for a fact that the employees have moved the Sahar police station to file an FIR.
If he owes 9,000 crores, the bank, as per the bankruptcy code, as per the other stringent laws we have introduced, he will be punished.
Are there any assets against the 9,000 crores? All I want to ask you, if somebody gives
one second.
See, these are technical questions, Mr. Damania.
Quick question. You said,
Gentlemen,
listen to me.
You are not in position to even talk on the issues because this is to be looked by the bank.
No. Who owns the bank? It's a public sector, public service bank. Who owns it? Who owns the bank?
This is the question. Did bank give a statement that they do not have ample assets? No.
Owns
Did the bank made any statement that
this is a government-owned bank. It is run with my money and your money, Mr. Ghosh.
Why you are apprehending?
No. So just tell me something. You said if he's done something wrong, he will be punished.
That there is not enough asset to back up.
Mr. Ghosh, I think this is one of the problems that you're not listening. You said if Naresh Goyal has done something wrong, he will be punished. How will you punish him? You'll start an extradition process that will take another 3 years. How will you punish him? Why was he allowed to fly out of the country to begin with?
First, let us first prove that he has left the country.
He's in London, Mr. Ghosh. He's been in London for the last 1 month.
That he has left the country. He is not going to come back.
He's in London for the last
you
few
Yes,
know,
so
as a
he may be in
government,
London
you know
with
where
proper
your
visas and
creditor who has
proper
borrowed
visas and
10,000
everything.
crores is? Do you
He has
know?
not given
Do the
a
banks
statement
know?
that I am not going to
Do
come
the
back to the
banks know
country.
where he is? I just want to ask you, you lent a person 10,000, 8,000 crores. It has completely defaulted. Do you know where he is? You are saying he's in India. I am saying he's in London. What does the bank say?
Well, the last point of communication was London, where he sent an email to his employees. He has now bid, we understand, from London.
From London.
3 days ago.
So
we have no evidence to suggest he's flown
by
back.
the airline, maybe 500
London,
1,000
that
just tell him
doesn't
to pay off
mean
the
that he
loans.
has left
Pay
this
the
country.
employees.
He
Pay
has
the
a
employees,
pagoda.
pay off the loans.
Okay, one
Has
second.
the
Let me
Provident
hear
Fund
the
Commission
answers.
filed a
One
case?
second, Mr. Damania, let me hear the answer. Mr. Ghosh, what's the answer?
Yeah, that's what I'm telling, that if he has left the country, just because you are informing, if he has left the country doesn't mean that he will not going to come back, number one. Number two, all this money which has been given to him by the bank must have taken proper measures and proper backups in when they have issued this money, when they have lent
I
this
think
money.
we'll talk after 2
At
months
this
again
point
how
of
much money
time when
was
the bank
recovered
is
and how
looking
much
for
was
Okay,
left.
let's not shout. Let's not shout. All right, I'm going to give Ravindra Gupta one opportunity.
Now the
no, Mr.
bank
Ghosh,
is
you
going
obviously
under
have not done enough
restructuring.
reading on this matter. Mr. Gupta, how did we continue to lend 8,000 crore rupees and now 9,000 crore rupees to this one airline that was continuously booking losses and defaulting, and we restructured? Secondly, how was Naresh Goyal let out of the country without any sort of personal individual responsibility? And he's let out of the country with enough money to attempt to buy the airline back after we've taken on the debt as Indian citizens. Mind-boggling levels of irresponsibility on part of SBI and PNB. Please tell me what's happening with our public sector banks.
No. First of all, I would say for any business failure, how the banks are responsible. Basically, banks are working under the policy guidelines of the Government of India, Reserve Bank of India, and the accounting procedure of the Institute of Chartered Accountant of India. And moreover, banks are not vested with any police power or the judiciary powers. And due diligence has been done in their case, and all the big loans or loans are not secured by the 100% security. This is totally a business failure. In this case, Jet Airways is also a business failure. And for any failure, every time on the panels and in the market, even every time the banks are held responsible for that reason.
Sorry, Mr. Gupta, I'm sorry.
A single power.
Mr. Gupta, I disagree with you, and I'll tell you why. Because post Nirav Modi, banks were given that authority. Can you tell me, Mr. Gupta, has SBI and PNB declared Jet Airways as an NPA? Yes or no?
Look, at that time it was not declared as the NPA. In the month of the March, all attempts were made that these should not go into the NPA. This is a big consortium of the account.
So,
8, 9 banks are involved into the financing to the Jet Airways.
Mr. Gupta, have SBI and PNB filed an FIR against Naresh Goyal, forgive me, they're now sounding interchangeable, against Naresh Goyal, or gone to court to recover the money that is owed to them? Because obviously he has the money, he wants to buy the airline back. Have they taken any sort of legal or action so far?
So that depends, that's on the boards of both the banks. What they have decided and what was in fact in their information, in their knowledge at that time.
So here you have a bank, SBI, let me remind you, Mr. Gupta, that was started so that the poorest people in our country have access to banking. It is meant to service the poor. It is meant to service the public, which is why it is a public sector bank. What it is doing is creating a soft, careful bed of money for people like Nirav Modi and Naresh Goyal to take that money and leave the country with zero accountability. Isn't that what has actually happened? You telling me that Jet Airways was hunky-dory fine with 8,000 crore rupees of loan one day, and suddenly, boom, the next day it went completely belly up? Is that SBI's reading of the situation? In which case, the management of SBI should be changed tomorrow. Don't you agree?
See, financial risk is the integral part of this banking. And basically operational risk, the bank lend the money and this is always at the risk. at this moment, the loan has been given with the due diligence and the appraisal of that. It is
What
not
is,
a
okay,
fraud
so if you're
that the
telling
loan
me
was
confidently,
wrongly
Mr.
given to the
Ravindra
Jet
Gupta,
Airways.
that the loan has been given with due diligence, tell me what sort of collateral is SBI holding right now, which it can sell and recover this money? What is the collateral that you have? Tell me.
No, no, as per the Reserve Bank of India policy and the Government of India policy, all the loans are not wholly 100% secured by the collateral.
50% secured by collateral?
Business model and
you have
RBI
4,000 crore rupees worth of assets right now that you can
20,
liquidate?
Even
4,000 crore, 50% collateral you have?
No, in fact...
30%? 20%? 10%? How much collateral do you have? Jet Airways has no assets. What will you sell? What will he doesn't even have a villa on the beach in Goa like you did the last time. What will you sell this time?
This is as per the government law. What judiciary powers and the bank can go approach to the courts.
Let me solve this mystery for everybody. SBI and PNB are public sector banks that's run with taxpayer money. Taxpayer money is a bottomless pit of endless money that you can just keep reaching into to help your friends. The person on your screen is a friend of powerful people. He was helped out. His business was in trouble. They allowed him to palm off that entire business and that loan of 9,000 crore rupees to taxpayers like you and me and just leave the country scot-free with all of his assets intact, to a point where he has actually 3 days ago offered to bid and buy the airline back because now the loans have been taken care of, right? So he'll take the airline back. He thinks we're stupid. It is the responsibility of the Finance Ministry and the RBI to make sure that public sector banks are run responsibly. A responsibility that has been let go of and they have failed. It is a responsibility of the banks, SBI and PNB management to make sure that when they're giving out loans, they're giving them out to businesses that can pay back. Again, this is something they have not done. It is fully within their power to stop Naresh Goyal from leaving the country. Again, something they have not done. What have they done? They've used our money as if there's no account, no hisab. They can just spend it and lose it as far as possible, saying there's a risk, what to do? Nobody's going to ask you, right? Who's going to ask? When we talk about farm loan waivers, everybody grinds their teeth about the fact that how can we forgive the loans of poor farmers? But fat cats like Naresh Goyal, let's say let him go to London. Shocking. Shocking irresponsibility on behalf of our government, who has tried to cover this up until the elections because they didn't want the story coming out. Unfortunately for them, the cover-up didn't work. Thanks for watching.